We're going to continue with topic 2.2. Now we're going to be converting linear equations to standard form. Standard form is when you have your equation written ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c are just numbers or integers that are in that equation. For an equation to be correctly written in standard form, there should be no fractions. The coefficient or number in front of x must be positive, and your equation must be simplified if possible. When you're writing your equations in standard form, you want to make sure that the terms with x or y are to the left and your constants are to the right. You want to undo any fractions. You want to make sure that the coefficient or number in front of x, if it's negative, is multiplied by -1, because the number in front of x needs to be positive. And if there is a common factor, you divide the numbers to simplify by that common factor. So here we're going to be writing these equations in standard form. Remember, standard form, you want it to look like ax plus by equals c. So if you look at your first equation, we want to make sure x and y are on the left. X is not in the left, so we need to move it. Anytime you're undoing something from one side and moving it to another, remember you're doing the opposite. So I want to make sure my x is in front. If it's 8x on the right, when you move it to the left, it's going to change to -8x. And then the y is already on the left, so it stays positive y. So all I did was I moved my x over. That's my step 1. This one doesn't have fractions, so we don't have to worry about step 2. Step 3 says if the coefficient of x is negative, multiply by -1 to make it positive. So we want x to be a positive number. So I'm going to multiply everything by -1 in my equation. And all that does is change the signs. Because -1 times -8 is +8. -1 times y is -y. And -1 times -5 is +5. So really you're just changing all your signs. From there, if there's a common factor, you would divide by it. But here, there's no number besides 1 that 8 and 5 can be divided by. So this is already in standard form. Again, we're writing our equations in standard form. So if you look at question 2 here, our first step again is we want x and y on the left side. Here, y is on the right, so we need to move it over. X goes first, so I'm going to write down my 14x. When I move -7y, it changes signs. So it becomes positive or plus 7y. And then the 21 stays on the right where it was positive. There's no fractions. Here I check my number in front of x. It's positive, so that's okay. The only thing now to check is if there's a common factor. So if you look at your numbers, 14, 7, and 21, all those numbers can be divided by 7. So since all these numbers can be divided by 7, I'm going to divide everything by 7 to simplify or make my equation smaller. So I end up getting 2x plus 1y, or just y, equals 3. So this is the correct way for writing standard form. If you can simplify, make sure to do so. Our next example, again, we want to make sure x and y are on the left. So here, x always goes first. So I'm going to make sure to move my x first. If it's 24x on one side, on the next side, it's going to become -24x. Y is already on the correct side, and it's positive, so I'm going to write plus 18y. Now 9 is on the wrong side because you want your constants on the right. So I'm actually going to move the 9 over, and when it moves to the other side, it becomes a -9. So remember, once you move something to another side, it's like you're undoing it, so it changes signs. Now I check my x. It has a negative coefficient. I don't want a negative number in front of x. So what I'm going to have to do is multiply everything by -1. Remember, all that does is it changes the signs. So I'm going to get a positive 24x, a negative 18y, equals positive 9. I don't have any fractions. Now I want to check to make sure that there's not a common factor. So we look at 24, 18, and 9. Is there a number that all three of those numbers can be divided by? There is. They can all be divided by 3. So I'm going to divide all of these by 3 to make my equation smaller. So I end up getting 8x minus 6y equals 3. And now my equation is correctly written in standard form. You look at the last problem here, number 4. Remember, we want to start by making sure x and y are on the left. So I have to move x over. It becomes negative 2/3 x. Then I have positive 3/4 y equals positive 5. Remember, you want your number in front of x to be positive. So right now it's negative, so I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1. And that changes the signs. So I get 2/3 x minus 3/4 y equals negative 5. This problem has fractions. We don't want fractions, so we're going to undo them by multiplying a common denominator. So my denominators right now are 3 and 4. A common denominator of 3 and 4 would be 12. So I'm going to multiply everything by 12 to get rid of fractions. 12 times 2/3 is, or 24 divided by 3 is 8x. 12 times 3/4, or 12 times 3 is 36. Divided by 4 is 9y. And 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. So now I have it in standard form. I want to check if there's a common factor all three numbers can be divided by. 9 can only be divided by 1, 3, and 9. Since 8 can't be divided by 3 or 9, this one's already simplified. So again, standard form is ax plus by equals c. X and y have to be on the left. X goes first. The number in front of x has to be positive. If it's not, you multiply by negative 1. If there's any fractions, undo them by multiplying a common denominator. And check at the end to make sure that your equation can't be simplified by dividing a common factor.